Good morning and welcome to CoachesCorner.health. We're so glad you've decided to join us today as we continue our series about being ready to date and how to get out into the dating world to find your match. Last week, we decoded the age old question: Am I the person my perfect partner would want to date? And this week, we're going to dive into how you know you found your match. But before we get started, let me tell you who I am. I'm Leslie Gadet. I'm a self care coach, and I specialize in helping my clients prioritize self care to support their lifestyle so they can wake up with more energy, focus, and intention to not only tackle their own daily activities, but serve their clients with confidence. Andy, tell us who you are.
Thank you, Leslie. I love your introduction every single time. You're brilliant. Hello, everybody. I am Andy Lidstone. I'm the unconditional coach. I help people with boundaries and control issues and many, many other things, self or mental health issues and personal development stuff and all kinds of things. And I'm really looking forward to today's topic. How to know you found your match. That's an interesting one because we often, I won't say it all the time, but often skip this question. We often skip this part in the dating process. We just assume that that person, if they said yes, they must be a match for us, right? If they keep going on more dates and further dates, and they keep saying yes, then or we keep saying yes to their requests, then obviously there must be something there. But are they really the right one? And how do we know? I mean, is it possible the wrong one would say yes?
Mhm.
I mean, potentially, theoretically, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are in your life too. I can just say from experience that the wrong one
Yeah.
has said yes to me, and I've said yes to the wrong person. So,
I've done that too.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't mean that you're wrong or anything's bad about that. It's a learning experience. But yeah, it happens. So yeah, I want to be able to dive into this actual question. Like, how do I know that I found them? How do I know if they're the right match for me? What can I do to actually figure that out?
That's a good question. I like that. And um, I think I'll take the bait and I'll start the conversation this time. Um, Usually I try to defer to you, but I'll take the bait and start this time. Um, from my experience, how do I know I've got the right one? Well, first of all, we have to define who's our match. What's a match? How do we know what that is? Um, and I'll start out by saying that isn't something that Leslie and myself, like you and I, will define for you, for our audience. Like, this is something you have to define for yourself. What's a match? I mean, some people are looking for just a hookup. And although on dating apps, the reputation is most men are looking for hookups, I know just as many women that are too. Um, Sometimes you're looking for Mr. or Mrs. right now, not Mr. or Mrs. forever, just Mr. or Mrs. right now. Just somebody to be around for a while I'm, sorting something out or, hanging out in this particular city or neighborhood or whatever. So it depends on what it is you're looking for. So the first step in finding out if they're your match is, do they want what you want? Like, if you're looking for a hookup, is that what they're looking for? If you're looking for a long-term, grow old together, cuddle on the couch forever kind of a relationship, is that also what they're looking for? I think one of the mistakes that gave men this reputation on dating apps specifically is that a lot of the men who are looking for hookups on those apps don't really wait to find out what the woman's looking for, right? A lot of the guys who were just looking for that short, quick release um, didn't care who it was on the other side of the conversation, and that's a misalignment. That's a disconnection. At the same time, it's really hard to fall in love with somebody who isn't looking for, you know, the same things that I'm looking for. Isn't looking for the long term commitment or some exploration of that. So the first step is to find out, do they even want what you want? Are they looking for the kind of relationship you're looking for? You have to figure out what it is you want, right? A lot of times we go on dates, whether it's from a dating app or from somebody at a club or, a blind date a friend set us up with, or just somebody we met at the grocery store. A lot of times when we go on a date, we don't, we're, and I've heard this a lot from clients, I'm just going to wing it and see what happens, which is great. But if you don't even know what your intentions are, um, what's going to happen is nothing you like, or it'll seem like everything you like until 3 weeks later, or a month later, or 3 months later, right? So, what's a match? First of all, let's start there, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's you have to really actually know what you want first of all, like, and because in order
Yeah,
for you to know if you found your match, you have to actually know what it is that you want. Because
yeah,
you, as you've pointed out, and being on these dating apps, I've never been on one, so I don't know what the experience is, but I can just imagine that being on an app is, you're saying who you are, what your qualities are, what you're looking for. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person on the other side of that is actually being truthful, but that could be just a way for them to bring you in so that they can get that. It's now you've got to really do a little bit of research. It's not just about taking someone at word value
yeah,
as an example, instead of face value, I'm saying word value. And the reason why I'm saying it that way, because someone can put their picture, they look great, they can tell you that they like long walks on the beach, they love puppies, and they love to cook together, and that could be total crap, or it could be true. You just don't know. The first indication is really having that first conversation. That's why one of the things that I would think for myself personally, if I was to ever have to end up on a dating app, I mean, that would have to be that I would no longer be with my husband. And that would really probably be that he's just no longer here, which I'm not wishing that upon him. But I'm just saying, if I wasn't married, for me to be on a dating app, the first thing that in order for myself to even meet the person would to have a few conversations on the telephone to
hmm
really kind of have those conversations because I know it, but I know what I would be looking for. And
right,
that would be, first of all, for me, would be someone who is good at communicating
yeah,
because communication is important for any relationship. And you might not know how to do that right now, but you can still learn it. It's not like it's out of reach. It's just learning how to do it. But I
yeah,
think my personal experience I would think would have to be to start with those first conversations, really asking some questions like before I even, and that is based on what I want, what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for
yes,
the hookup. So
yeah,
if I'm just looking for the hookup, then of course I'm looking for those people. Then of course I know what the intention is behind that. But if I'm not looking for that and I'm looking for beyond just a hookup, I'm looking for a more deep, meaningful relationship, then of course I'm going to start having those conversations first before we meet. So it's really like how to know you found your match. You have to first of all know what it is that you're looking for, and then ask questions.
yeah,
Based on what you're looking for. Like as I said, if you're looking just for a hookup and someone piques your interest and that's what they're looking for, then you already know right out of the get go it's not going anywhere, and
hmm
you do that. But if you are specifically looking for someone that is a more deep, meaningful relationship, doesn't necessarily mean that you're looking for marriage, but I'm saying for a deeper, meaningful relationship, then it has to start with getting to know that person once you've had the interest returned, and then you have conversations, telephone conversations, actually talking on the phone, not texting, but actually talking on the phone, because I think you really can get the essence of a person really when they start to speak, because it's they, especially if you're not in person, they feel more relaxed on their end of the line because they're able to, like, you don't see them, there's no
yeah,
community. So if the interest isn't there after a conversation, you guys can hang up the phone and say okay, that's it. But it has to start like you were saying, what is my intention behind being on a dating app, for example, or even let's talk not even just a dating app, just in general, what you're looking for, what is your intention behind that, and then going from there and figuring out what do you want to know about this person in order for you to be able to determine if you found someone who is your match.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that. Now, something you said early on is I would want somebody who can communicate, and that's an interesting statement for several reasons. Because virtually everybody says that, and a lot of people say they're pretty good at communicating. Some of the couples that I know who have the biggest arguments have both been told by their circles that they're both good communicators. Their employers, their family and friends, that they're good communicators. But when they come to communicating to each other, they suck. So it's not just a matter of being a good communicator; it's being able to communicate well with me, right? Um, and that's important, right? It is about being a good communicator, but not just generally a good communicator, but somebody who communicates well with the other person on the other side of the conversation, right? I need somebody that's going to communicate the way I want to, or in a style that I can relate to, right? Just because I can understand you doesn't mean I'm going to like doing that. Just because you can understand me doesn't mean we're going to be able to get our points across easily. It might take a lot of effort to do so. Um, Another thing I wanted to mention too is you'd want to be on a phone call and not texting. I'm I personally want to do both. I've been in relationships where on the phone we're a brilliant, perfect match, but if we don't talk for a couple of days or a few days and we only text message, the relationship completely falls apart. So I would want to be able to do both. I would want to be able to communicate in several methods, whether it's through emojis or whether it's through text message or whether it's through email or whether it's through phone calls or in person, right? Because I agree that the phone call or the in person is a deeper and closer connection, but we don't always have that available. Like if one or both of us is at work or at the hospital or in some kind of an emergency or occupied somehow, then we won't necessarily have that available, and we might still need to communicate some things. So I would want to test several different methods of communicating and make sure that none of them break down in any kind of a catastrophic way. It's okay if we don't communicate perfectly because we can learn that. But we at least have to have some basic chemistry in most methods of communication, some basic understanding. At least, even if we do break, if the communication falls apart when we're texting or communication falls apart when we're emailing, that we both understand that and aim to fix that when we have a conversation on the phone or in person. That we know that that's why it's breaking down. It's not necessarily because somebody said something or somebody did something. It's actually just because we don't communicate well through this particular method. So let's try one of the ones that we do get through with. Um, you know, so I'd want that understanding. So communication is a big deal, and I think it's important that we point out that being a good communicator is not universal. Being a good communicator is highly dependent on the person you're talking to. Like you and I communicate well together, yet my ex-wife and I don't. So who's the problem? My ex-wife? I don't think so, because she also does really, really well, A, in her current relationship, and B, with all of her other collaborations. They really get her. She has a public access job, so she's talking to people from the public all the time, and she has very few conflicts in that job with her clients and the public. So therefore, is she the problem? I don't think so. So what is the problem? I mean, I'm a good communicator. She's a good communicator. We just are oil and water when we try and talk to each other, right? So it isn't just universally being good at it. It's a matter of, can we figure out how to do so together? And is there multiple ways we can do that, right? So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I like that you brought that into it. And one of the things that I think where communication breaks down is that there's a component to it that we're not necessarily, I don't know if we're aware of it or we're just not really bringing that into our awareness, which is there's that emotional communication. Communicating in a relationship is emotional, regardless. You might not be emotional when you're communicating, but your emotions are involved in your communication. So that's why I believe sometimes people in their relationships don't work out because it's not just about one person anymore. It's two people sharing space that
Yes.
now there's two personalities, two ideas, two ways of thinking, two ways of feeling, two ways of expressing how you feel, your emotions. And it's learning to be open to really put on your listening skills, because that's where the
Yeah.
communication really can break down if you don't do that. Because if you are the type of person that is listening to respond in your relationship, you're going to miss out on a lot of cues that would otherwise give you, you know, real valuable information to help you navigate your relationship. If
What
you
is listening to
are
respond?
listening to respond is having that you're already thinking of your answer before the person's finished speaking.
Hmm.
You're not allowing yourself to hear them out, to hear everything they have to say before you like, and then listen and then figuring out, okay, this is what they said, so that you can understand what they've said before you respond. you know
Hmm.
i my husband and I, we've learned to communicate much better because we both have learned to listen fully to what the other person has to say and then respond to it, because now we're getting it all. In the past, we would hear only part of it and already be formulating our response and miss out on valuable information that could help us, because
Hmm.
maybe someone's trying to um, tell you something about how they think and feel. And if you're not listening intently to what they're saying, you could miss out on what they're really trying to say, and you could come to your own conclusion, which may not even be the conclusion that they're trying to explain. So that's why I say listening to respond. So it is
I
an
agree.
emotional, when you're in a relationship, your communication is all emotional, but it's not emotionally the way you're not communicating through your emotions. Some people do. That just depends on where you're at in the conversation. But
Yep.
I think it's like when you are, if you understand that this is a commitment, an emotional commitment to someone when you're in a relationship that you want a deep, more meaningful relationship with them. That's an emotional commitment. So that
Yes.
means that your communication is also going to come from that place. And it's just learning how to, again, learn to listen first before you respond, so you get a better understanding, and be open to understanding and be open to not always agreeing, because we're not always going to agree. That's just the way we are wired, and that's okay. But that will help you to know if you found your match. If you're with someone who doesn't listen to you and is constantly interrupting you when you're speaking and doesn't give you a chance to explain your thoughts and feelings before they're already jumping in with their own conclusive thoughts, then maybe they're not your match. And so it's just finding that's why I wanted to like just kind of like piggyback off of what you were saying about it's not just about being able to speak the words, because we all, like you were saying, we're both great communicators with each other, with other people, but how do we communicate in our relationships? And
Hmm.
and we both learned this, what I've just been talking about. We both learned that this is a valuable way for us to communicate with our significant others and even like the
Yeah.
people in our lives that are close to us. So it's
Yeah.
like, and that's how we know that will help us to find not only our perfect, not our perfect, but we found the match for our, our romantic life, but how about business partners? You know, you and I,
Yeah.
as an example.
Yeah.
Not to go off topic too long, but when I first approached you about doing this together 3 years ago, it's crazy to believe, to think that, but back in 2021, talked about it and we started it right away. But I knew instantaneously after I had interviewed you in my ladies group around relationships, and I knew instantaneously at that point that this is something we could do together. I just felt it
Mm-hmm.
instantaneously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's, because we got to know each other months before, and then
Mm-hmm.
doing that conversation, and I knew this is something I wanted to do, and we've evolved over time. But it's that learning to like look at those cues and
Mm-hmm.
learning to understand that we're both, our relationship, even though it's a friendship, still has the emotional component to it, and we've
Yes.
learned to navigate that.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that is paying attention to not just the thing that triggered you to have an answer. Like many of the things that you just said triggered me to want to respond. But continuing when you have a response to listen to the rest, because you might have a further or expanded response, or you might even change your response, right? Which is something that we do, you and I, in these conversations often. There's something we were thinking about, when you first started talking. I'm like, oh, well, I want to say this now, and yet we listen and we keep responding, or we keep storing up what you're saying, what each other is saying, so that we can have um, a more connected response. It's more about what you were saying rather than just that one thing that made me think, oh, I got to say something now, which does cause us to jump in. Which honestly, in that last one, I did. What does listening to respond actually mean? Um, but that's the point, right? It is an emotional connection. Um, to to further expand on that, what you were saying about it's an emotional conversation in romantic relationships, but even in partnerships and other kinds of relationships. When we're communicating, we're only sometimes communicating facts. We're almost all the time communicating an emotion. We're communicating how we feel about something. When we go home to our spouse and say, "Can you believe that coworker that XYZ?" Or "Can you believe this person who cut me off on the highway?" Or "Can or this happened at work, or that happened at work, or my mom did this, or my brother did that, or whatever." We're not talking about the facts. Although that might be what we're saying is the facts. We're expecting the person we're talking to understand the feelings, the emotions. And beyond the emotions, we're hoping they'll understand the experience we had. And that requires us to listen to not just the facts that the person says or the words on the page, but how and why they might say them. Because there's a lot more to this than just the facts, right? Even when you and I are communicating on these videos, there's plenty of facts in what we're saying, there's plenty of information in what we're saying, but it isn't the information we're communicating. Most of it is our experience of these things, what it's like for us to live in these things. And sometimes we're not talking about what we actually live, but what we hypothetically might have lived, like dating apps. But we're still trying to communicate an experience, either real or imagined, or we're trying to communicate, a sense of feeling. Um, and although facts might be involved, or truth might be involved, that's not the main point of the communication. Um, and to your point, we are communicating emotions. We're not necessarily communicating through emotion. We're not, happy or sad or mad or glad or whatever. We're not necessarily those emotional, heavy feelings when we're communicating. Sometimes we are, but not always. But just about every time we are communicating, there's some kind of a feeling we're communicating. There is something emotional. There is an emotional attachment there. So I like that you said that. And I wanted to back up a little bit to um, listening to respond. One of the things I wanted to add to what you said was formulating your response before you listen to the answer. which as soon as you said that, I had an answer to say, but I listened to the rest of what you said, so that I could have an intelligent conversation with you, as we usually do. But I wanted to go back to that one, and one of the things that I wanted to add to that, one of the things that makes it difficult for us to understand. One of the reasons we listen to respond and makes it and find it difficult to listen to understand is when somebody says something, we make a judgment about them or the person they're talking about. For example, if I were talking to someone else about using dating apps and about men having a reputation for wanting, one night stands or hookups on dating apps, if I were talking to somebody else might have a judgment about that, an emotional response. Oh, that's not what men do, or yeah, that's all I've experienced from men, and they wouldn't hear anything else I've had to say. They would just wait for me to shut up long enough for them to say that response, or they might not even wait for long enough. They might just interrupt. Um, Generally speaking, when we have a judgment about what somebody else is saying, it makes it really hard for us to stay in a conversation and try and understand what they're saying. Our judgments pull us out of the conversation. Our assessment of the words that they said or the topic they're talking about, whether we believe it or not, whether we think it's horrible or perfect, or whether whatever they're talking about, we have a judgment about that. Those judgments can pull us out of the conversation. So that's a version of listening to respond. When we have a thing that we say and it triggers somebody else to just have a thought and they're stuck on that thought, it's generally because if we're stuck on a thought, it's generally because we've got a judgment about it of good or bad, right or wrong, true or false. We've got some kind of a judgment. Um, so if you want to learn how to stay in a conversation and listen to understand, check your judgments. It will help you stay in conversations if you can check your judgments. It's something that you and I learned a long time ago how to do, is to check our own judgments. One of the reasons I think we have such great conversations is because we don't bring much judgment to these conversations. We're trying to explore a topic. That's it. Right. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to, add to develop, um, add to the conversation, about communication. But communication is only one way to know you found your match. What are some of the others you can think of?
Hmm, great question. I really think one of the things also that stands out for me, because I think that in the beginning it would be communication in order to begin the relationship and to start to start exploring it, then the actions. Because I think someone can talk all day that they're this and they're that they do these types of things, that they are a good person, that they are great communicators, or that they're empathetic to other people, they're compassionate. They can say all of those things, but for me, I think the next really big indicator on a good match is someone's actions matching who they say they are. Because if someone tells me that they, for example, love animals,
Mm-hmm.
yet their actions speak differently, and I see how they treat animals is not nice, it's not a good thing, then I know that that's not a truth about them. To me, it's like it's kind of like in integrity in a way, but I
Yes.
really feel like their actions really help me then to decide, okay, if you're a good person and you say that these are the qualities about you because you've shared that these are the qualities about you, to me, to let me know that you could be a possible good match for me, then I'm going to start watching how, if you're walking the walk that you say that you do, that
Yeah.
you are. So I think, yeah, communication is the first part out of the gate, so that you can start seeing like how you communicate with each other, and then the actions would come next for me. How about yourself?
I agree. Um, and I'm glad you didn't say the one thing I've heard a lot of clients say: actions speak louder than words. Because I don't think actions do speak louder than words. What speaks the loudest is how well do they match. Like you said, it's not so much about which one speaks louder, the words or the actions, but what says the volumes, what says the most about a person is how well your actions and words align. Um, and what I told that client, the last client that said it to me, is I said actions and words don't have the same intentions. Our words are what we want the truth to be. Our actions are what our subconscious thinks the truth already is. And what we want and what our subconscious thinks are rarely the same thing. So they don't often speak the same thing. When they do, it's because that person has done enough personal development to align their subconscious reactions to their intended truth. They've figured out who they are inside and align that with who they actually want to be. And that's, like you said, that's a version of integrity. This is how we become the person we want to be. And how do you get into a relationship with somebody who can be your match? When they're a match with themselves, when they're aligned with themselves. You can't be in a relationship with somebody and be a match if their thoughts and their subconscious reactions aren't the same. Because you can only align with one of those if they're not the same, if any at all. Right? So you'll end up in conflict even if you are a match. So I think it's important that we do some of that internal work so that our reactions, our subconscious reactions that we really don't have much control over, they align with who we want to be and who we think we are, what the truth we want to, what we want the truth to be about ourselves. They won't ever be fully aligned, but the more aligned they are, the more ready we are to be in a relationship, and the more the person we're talking to, the more their actions match their words, the more we know and can see that they've done some of that work and know who they really are. And when they know who they really are, then this communication we had earlier, this talking, the conversation, the words, we can start to trust those more. Right? So it is about communication, and then it's about, does that match? To go back to the dating apps for a minute, I'm in no means an expert. I was on a single dating app for about a month, so that doesn't make me an expert at all. I didn't meet anybody on them, and I probably never will. But I do have some experience on dating apps. Plus, I've also done some research into them for the sake of some of my clients. And it's common knowledge, if you do any kind of preparation for creating a profile on a dating app, it's common knowledge that we should put anything outdoorsy we like to do, anything around people that we like to do, and anything romantic that we like to do. We should not put anything cultural that we like to do. We should not put anything cliquey or associated with a specific identity, like a nerd or a redneck, or like some of the things that I identify with. We're actually told not to put those on our profiles. So right away, already people are creating profiles that are more sales pitches than truth. Right? So to your point of, do their actions match their words? If we go on a date, are we doing some of the things that they put in their profile? Right? If they say, I like long romantic dinners and walks in the moonlight, Are we going to go for dinner and a walk? Right? Or are we going to end up in some dingy movie theater someplace making out? Because that's not what your profile said. Right? If we're going to go watch a Lord of the Rings or a Star Wars movie and make out in a theater, that isn't what your profile said. But that's what I might end up doing. Just because that's what I like to do. I like to go to nerdy movies. One
Yeah.
of the reasons I wasn't on a dating app for long is because I didn't align with most of the things that they said I should put on my profile. I'm like, oh well, if that's what girls on dating apps are looking for, clearly dating apps aren't where I'm going to find the girl I want to date. So that's another way to find out, not just on dating apps, but if you meet somebody on a blind date, a friend of yours or a relative set you up on a blind date, and on your first date you're like, yeah, I like this and I like that and I like this and I like that, and you're both aligned and you both like the same things, great. Then what about your second, third, or 10th or 15th date? Are you still doing the things you said you like? Because I promise you, those first few things you listed, there's only about 3 dates in there, maybe 5 at maximum. So what are you doing on your 10th or 15th date? Is it still those things? Right? What are you talking about when you're spending 4 hours on a phone in the middle of the night? Is it still those things? Like, if you've said I'm an outdoorsy kind of a person, I like camping and hiking, are you talking about the places you've gone, the experiences that you've had while you were camping or hiking, or are you just talking about the latest movies that you've watched, or the latest video games that you played, or the latest puzzle you put together, or the latest book that you read? Because that doesn't line up. So, to your point, if the person doesn't do the things they talked about, whether it's I'm an honest person and you see them lying, right? Like animals, you see them mistreating animals, or whether it's the interest they put on their profile or the interest they told you about, whatever the case may be, if there's a misalignment in what they're saying to what they're doing, that doesn't mean actions speak louder than words. It just means neither one of them is speaking the truth, right? It means they don't know themselves. And how can they be in a relationship with you? How can you love them if you don't know which part of them is the real them? Right? So another way you found your match is, do their actions and words line up? Do they align? So I like that because it does make sense to me. And it's one
Yeah.
of the things that I've used.
Yeah. And then for me, I was also thinking as you were talking, you know, as you get deeper into the conversations and if this person has sparked an interest and you want to continue getting to know them, um, I think actually even really pretty much out of the gate as well is if you're looking as you get to know someone and they start to open up and be more truthful about themselves and about their past, and maybe there could be some red flags that you've decided that you're going to ignore, and one of them could be that your typical person that you would be attracted to does a certain action or has a certain quality about them that you hoped that you would never encounter again because now you're getting to know them. But you get into a different frame of mind thinking, well, they have all of these other things, but now can I fix them of this one
Right.
thing? And if you get
Yes.
into that fix it mindset, that just kind of derails the whole thing because
Yeah.
it's not about fixing someone, it's about finding someone who's in alignment with who you are, what your values, what you're looking for, that you're in alignment with their values and what they're looking for, and you're a match. But
Yeah.
it's not about going and finding like someone to maybe fix. And then what I know a lot of women, growing up, women friends of mine, myself even included, before I got married, would always lose ourselves in the relationship because we thought out of once we got to know someone and became interested in them and they became interested in us, because again we weren't looking at, oh, are they really a match, but we were looking at, oh, they said yes. So now
Hmm.
you start living life and find yourself becoming more and more. someone that you're not, because now you're missing your friends, you're missing out and doing other things, you've kind of lost your own, not, I don't necessarily would say your own identity, but the person that you are, the life, living the life, your life, the way you were living it before you met this person.
I think that is an identity.
Yeah. And so, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is I recently saw on social media a young woman had written this specific thing about having a bad breakup, and she had recognized that she had, kind of alienated her friends circle, so she didn't have a life outside of this relationship until it ended and it was a bad breakup. And I can really relate to that because that was me. I would immerse myself fully into this relationship, not realizing that I could be my own person and still be that person that he was attracted to in the beginning,
Yeah.
and still be that person as we moved along in our relationship. And I think what happens is a lot of the women that I know, myself included in the beginning, we would be that person that was attracted to that what they were attracted to, and then started slowly changing and morphing into what they wanted, their lifestyle, putting them first, forgetting about our own needs, forgetting about living our life outside of the relationship. And then it became okay, now we're fully immersed and we lose ourselves. Other women I know have also had, found a guy that they really liked that said yes, but ignored those red flags, as I was saying, and thought, no, I can fix it. I can fix this. I can fix this. I can fix this. And all that ends up doing is puts you in this place where then you start to resent the relationship you're in and you're not happy. You're trying to change someone who's not happy that you're trying to change them, maybe feeling that they don't need to change, and maybe they do need to change, but in their point of view, they don't understand, if you like them, you like them for all of them, and who are you to think that you can change them? So, there's those two things that, like the first two for me are really important: communication and then the action and words matching. But it's also, and that really kind of leads to authenticity, them being themselves. But it
Yeah.
also then learning to, if you're looking for your match, is knowing, recognizing that even though you might have found that person, is not to, or maybe, not to like lose yourself in that relationship where now you disappear. Or if you found someone just and you think they're your match, they said yes, you're sort of interested, but then you start seeing red flags and you think, oh, I can fix this. These are other things that you should start asking questions around, because if this is a pattern, this is the very beginning of the relationship is where you'll start to know. don't don't ignore it. I know
Yes.
in the past we were thinking, well, we want to be in a relationship, but being in a relationship at the cost of having a healthy relationship, I would rather be single than be in a relationship with someone where I don't recognize who I am, or being with someone who I'm thinking I have to fix them and
Yeah.
it's not working.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. First of all, if I'm in a relationship with somebody who's got red flags, I don't necessarily shut that down because of the red flags. However, I will shut it down if I get the idea I gotta fix it. If there's a whole bunch of really good qualities, they got a lot of the good qualities, but they have one or two red flags, like real showstoppers, and they're like, I don't know that I could ever do this again. Um, Ask yourself, is it worth trying to change who I am or my tolerance? Am I willing to tolerate that action? Not hope they'll change it, but can I love them for however long it is if they don't change that? And if you can honestly say yes, then it is more of a yellow flag, not a red one, right? It's more of a pause and think. But if it's still a red flag, then stop right there. If the good qualities they have can outweigh the bad ones, then you can ask yourself, can I tolerate that bad thing so that I get all these good things? And if that answer is no, then don't go further. Or sit down with that person and say, look, this is a red flag. If this is really a true characteristic of yours, we can't go further. But if this is just some sort of a coping mechanism, or if this is just some sort of a trauma response, then in order for us to go further, I need you to work on that. I won't fix you, but I can make a request that you do so. Right? Because then you're not fixing them, you're asking them to get fixed. If it's a problem. But if it's one of their real characteristics, that's who they really are, it's got to be a no-brainer at that point. So I like that you brought that up, because these red flags, we always assume, and this is why I think so many of us do stick in relationships that have red flags, is we're like, well, there's so many of these qualities I like, just because there's this red flag doesn't shut that off. Well, you're right. But don't ignore the red flag, like you said. Don't ignore the red flag. But there is a way to not ignore it that isn't leave immediately. I mean, yes, leave immediately needs to be an open option. But there are other options too. Ask yourself, is it really a red flag? Like, can I actually not tolerate any of this? And if that's the case, then you've got to leave. There's no fixing. You're not allowed to expect them to change. You can ask them to. It's the best you can do. It's the strongest you can get. And if you ask them and they say yes and don't, that's another red flag. That's a second red flag. That's an integrity thing. That's something that happened between my ex and I. So those are other alignment questions we can say, like have you found that person? Are those red flags actually red? Can you tolerate them? Do they have enough good qualities that you want to try? Don't fix them. And there was something else that you were saying too that I wanted to touch on. I can't remember what that was. But if I think about it, I'll bring it up. But yeah, the idea that it could be that there's these red flags and we should just leave immediately. There's always another option. And that's what it was. The guys' versions of this. Guys also get lost in relationships. And while, yes, we also do lose a lot of our friends when we get into a relationship, we don't necessarily do so because of the woman. What guys tend to do is instead of dropping our social circle, we'll drop our hobbies. We'll drop the things we like to do, which by default generally comes with our social circle. So I'll stop playing pool. I'll stop going curling. I'll stop playing baseball, which usually means I stop doing those things with the people I was doing them with. So I do lose my friends, but that isn't the point. The point is I stopped doing the thing that I loved. Maybe because she wouldn't do it with me, or maybe because she doesn't enjoy it or doesn't understand it, but for whatever reason. Or maybe because I decided I needed to work more to provide for us. Or I wanted to spend more time with her instead of doing these other things. So we do drop our activities. Us guys lose ourselves in a relationship by stopping the things we love doing. Most guys, when they come out of a relationship, they're like, I don't even know what I like anymore. I haven't done those things for 10, 20 years. I don't even know if I still like them. And they go do them and they feel weird and alien, and they turn out they don't like them anymore. But they only don't like them because they're weird and alien, not because they don't actually like them. It just doesn't feel the same. So we do the same thing. We lose ourselves in relationship too, but for different reasons. And instead of trying to fix the woman, we try and love her through it. If I just love her enough, she'll change. No, she doesn't. She might change if you ask her to. You notice the theme here? Say something. Whether you're the man or the woman, whatever part of the relationship that you're in, if you find a quality you don't like, bring it up.
Yep. It's coming back to
Don't.
communication.
It all always does, right? That's why we started there. That's why we started there.
Hmm.
So yeah, it is just a matter of communicating, of being honest with yourself and your partner. And the more you intend to get out of this relationship, the more honesty is required. Which is why I think so many men and women prefer just the hookups, because they don't have to require a lot of deep emotional connection. They don't have to require a lot of vulnerability and emotion. I mean, if you ask me, having sex is one of the most vulnerable things I can do. I wouldn't want to do that just casually, but many people do. They find that easier to do than opening up emotionally. So if that's what you want, maybe that's the attraction. But make sure what you want aligns with the values you have and the actions you're taking and the words you're saying. Right? It all comes down to what do you want and how do you communicate.
Well, we are coming up to the hour, and it's been a
Already,
great conversation. Yeah, no, this has been great. I've really enjoyed it. I think
me too.
we've really fleshed it out, so to speak.
Yes,
Our key take points were key, key points were like again around communication, and then actions with our words. Matching, and then looking at those red flags as maybe yellow flags instead of just red flags. But if they are red, asking ourselves the honest questions, and even like learning to not allow ourselves to lose ourselves completely.
in the relationship.
Because that was part of what attracted them to us in the first place, or us to them in the first place. So, yeah,
Correct.
I enjoyed this thoroughly. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say before we close for the day.
Just thank you to you for this brilliant conversation, and to our audience for participating. Thank you all for listening and for watching. We love these conversations. We love doing them for you. We love doing them together. But it is for you. This is why we do this. I mean, we could just have these conversations privately to ourselves, but we do them on YouTube for you. So let us know what you think. Like, subscribe, all those wonderful YouTube algorithm things. Um, we like that too, but we're here for you. So thank you for that. This is what we're here for. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you, Andy. Again, it's been a pleasure. We didn't prepare for this other than just knowing what we were going to talk about. But I love the fact that we can bring our own experience into it to help,
Yes,
people to know that it's not just about. We're not making things up. We might have scenarios that could be what if, or this could be, but we also come from a place of experience. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
really have enjoyed this today. For all of you out there who are watching this live or watching it back, we appreciate you. Again, as Andy said, like and subscribe and share this around. You might have some people in your life that just need to hear this message, especially if they're dating and they're looking for their match, and they just want to give themselves some confidence around that as they go out into the dating world. We hope that you have a great rest of your weekend and a great week, and we'll see you again next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. See you then. Bye for now.
Bye bye, everybody.